in that there's not that much reading material here. But as we go into these themes in part two, this is actually number 8, not that the number means anything. I wanted to first do a little recounting of something from the past, which was the concept of the world as generally understood by people. I'm speaking outside the Course of Miracles now. Author Schopenhauer back in the 1800s said, the only world everyone is actually acquainted with and knows is carried about by him in his head as his representation, and he is thus the center of the world. Accordingly, everyone is all in all to himself. He finds himself to be the holder and possessor of all reality, and nothing to be more important to him than his own self. And so this is obviously the view of the little self. We call it the ego self. But Schopenhauer was correct in that everyone carries around in his head a representation of the world. And so when the Course of Miracles says the world, they're referring to it that way, the way you represent it in your mind. And what's so curious is that no two of us represent the world exactly the same in our own mind. In that sense, we all live in our own world. So, to contrast with that idea, A Course in Miracles then introduces the Holy Spirit's perspective about the real world. This is the correction for the concept of the world that we made up in our own head. And to understand that, here's 2 passages from other parts of the Course. The real world is all that the Holy Spirit has saved for you out of what you have made. And to perceive only this is salvation, because it is the recognition that reality is only what is true. So this is a selective perception, a perception that you still participate in, but one that is based on the truth and reinforced by the Holy Spirit. And so the Holy Spirit captures your representation of the truth, and that becomes your real world. Now, this goes deeper, as in workbook 50, lesson 58. My holiness envelops everything I see. From my holiness does the perception of the real world come. Having forgiven, I can no longer see myself as guilty. I can accept the innocence that is the truth about me, seen through understanding eyes. The holiness of the world is all I see, for I can picture only the thoughts I hold about myself. Again, the real world is still a picture one holds. Schopenhauer calls it a representation, a picture in one's mind that stems from their own inner holiness, and that having then glimpsed that inner holiness, that then colors our perception of the world we see without. In this case, we'll call it the real world. So, hello and welcome to Miracles on High Plains. My name is Jonica, and our reader today is Kathy S.
The real world is a symbol, like the rest of what perception offers. Yet it stands for what is opposite to what you made. Your world is seen through eyes of fear and brings the witnesses of terror to your mind. The real world cannot be perceived except through eyes forgiveness blesses. So they see a world where terror is impossible and witnesses to fear cannot be found.
Mm-hmm. So the real world is a symbol. Again, we're referring to the way the mind represents the world, this time based upon forgiveness. It represents it in your mind as a symbol. All perception does the same thing. For instance, take some simple concept like your mother. You represent your mother in your mind and give it certain attributes. It's the way your mind views your mother. All perception operates according to these laws of perception, whereby we represent or symbolize ideas in our mind, and then we believe that our representation is the absolute truth, and even defend our version, our representation. People go to war about their representation of what is real and true. So strongly do they hold these beliefs. So what else do we learn from here? So there's two worlds. The world, sometimes referred to it as the little world or your ego world. Your world is seen through the eyes of fear and brings the witnesses of terror to your mind. But the real world cannot be perceived except through eyes forgiveness blesses. So they see a world where terror is impossible. So in the progression of learning, we all begin by representing the world in our own mind based on our fears, our inadequacies, our ego perspective. We believe that to be true. With the aid of the Holy Spirit, we begin the healing journey. And more, that representation of the ego world diminishes. We withdraw our power from those representations. The very first 5 lessons of the workbook. Nothing I see means anything. I do not understand anything I see. It's a withdrawal of your power from the representations in your own mind, and then healing, but that in alone will not heal you. You must, after having withdrawn your power from that, then invest it in the representation that the Holy Spirit reinforces. And so that's the one that's perceived through the eyes forgiveness blesses. So in this progression, the real world becomes barely visible when we begin and increasingly visible as we learn to attune to the voice of the Holy Spirit, become conscious of our own soul, look within our own heart and soul first, and then look without on the world. It becomes increasingly visible to us through the practice of forgiveness. Susie?
Yeah, I had like a major breakthrough that I wanted to share. I'm looking for these lessons. Like or yesterday's lesson, like what is my real purpose? Like let me remember my purpose and let me remember, those let me remember lessons. And this sentence here, your world is seen through eyes of fear and brings the witnesses. And so, I've shared a lot about my journey with golf, right? And I thought I was supposed to find peace through getting over my fears of golf. And I realized that I had so much judgment around it, and I was judging myself and judging everything, and the truth was, but I wasn't being honest with myself. The truth was, it brought up a lot of fear for me and a lot of discomfort. And I realized just in the last few days that I have to find peace inside. And then maybe I can play golf. But I had it all upside down, and I was seeing the world through eyes of fears, and that was a witness. I was bringing the witness. Golf was like a witness of terror for me, really, truly, honest to God. And when I came to this clarity, like, I started to ask myself, what is this for? Why am I playing? What is this really for? Is the purpose, what is the purpose? And there was no purpose. Like, it was an ego idol. It was an idol. And I really it's been years. And, people say, oh, I don't know when I'm going to get this, and sometimes it takes a really long time. And maybe golf was my teacher to teach me what an idol and how much ego and terror and fear. And I have to tell you, like, I have all this clarity and this knowing, like, and relief and calm and peace that, like, oh, I don't have to do this. Who told me? My ego mind just should it on me for years. And I don't know. It's like so amazing. I feel such a relief, but this is true. I bring witnesses of terror to my mind. Not the messengers of love don't show up. The messengers of fear show up in the world that I have made. But in the real world, that's what is everything is for and what is my purpose. And the messengers of love show up. So I just wanted to share that because it's like a huge, huge breakthrough for me. And John, I've been talking about this for years. So anyway, I wanted to share that. And yeah, I want to reside in the big R real world where I'm just looking for the peace of God.
Thank you. Yeah, because you have talked about it, but I've never recall you saying golf was my teacher. I think this is what it looks like we're on the other side of the climb, is we realize, oh, that showed me things about myself I really maybe would not have preferred to have seen. But in that sense, golf is my teacher. And so the broader lesson here is to all of us, there are things in our lives that trigger us and aggravate us. And when we're trapped in the illusion, we're trapped in the aggravation. But when we start to rise above the battlefield and above the illusion, we realize this situation is a teacher to show us what it is we need to heal from.
I just have to share this really quickly. Heather just sent me a message and said, you let go of another identity role that you had for yourself. We are not any of our roles. And that's true. It was like, well, I should be this and I should be that. And I moved to Florida and blah, and it was like an identity role. And I love that, Heather. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a teacher to help me.
Most of the things that we get triggered by have to do with our identity being somewhere confused in there. Yeah. Thank you. Sandra?
Yeah, I would say that forgiveness is my teacher. It's an adventure for me because I've had a real challenge with forgiving, and it's a game changer. Forgiveness is the game changer. And I just want to remember that. It just changes everything.
It does. And that's what it's intended to do. That is its purpose. All right, thank you. We'll go on.
The real world holds a counterpart for each unhappy thought reflected in your world. A sure correction for the sights of fear and sounds of battle, which your world contains. The real world shows a world seen differently, through quiet eyes and with a mind at peace. Nothing but rest is there. There are no cries of pain and sorrow heard, for nothing there remains outside forgiveness. And the sights are gentle. Only happy sights and sounds can reach the mind that has forgiven itself.
So the real world holds a counterpart for each unhappy thought. I want to make sure you get a feel for this idea of a counterpart. For every thought of unforgiveness, for every grievance, for every judgment, every dark thought, there is a counterpart in the spiritual domain that the Holy Spirit scribes. She's the author, the translator, the interpreter of the counterpart, which would be and that counterpart is the correction to the way we saw things in the dark. And you can learn to trust this as a principle. It's as reliable as the Holy Spirit is that there is always a counterpart for every thought you have that might be troubling you. And if you trust that, you are more likely to look for it in times of aggravation and stress, to look for the counterpart. The counterpart will not force itself upon you. You must invite it. And so just learning to recognize the truth that there's always a counterpart for each unhappy thought found in the troubled world, and that counterpart is a sure correction for all your fears. Believe that as a universal truth and seek it out and invite it, and you will spare yourself many hours of aggravation. I know whereof I speak. Hours of aggravation trying to understand the darkness and the problem and how could this be, and struggling with all that, when instead we could turn and ask for the counterpart and have a solution found there. So the real world shows a world seen differently. And this is where mind training comes in. This counterpart is in another part of your mind. It's in the quiet part of your mind. And while I'm all hysterical and chaos and aggravated and triggered and thinking 1,000 thoughts at once, grinding away at how could this be and everything, that's not the part of my mind where the counterpart is to be found. The counterpart, I have to be willing to calm my mind, let go of my own preoccupied thoughts, and make room so that I can enter in to the place of rest. This is why we suggest the divine pause. When you're in the moment of an ego storm, learn to pause so that you slow down and begin to entertain the idea that this need not be. I don't have to be in this state. This is not what peace looks like. I can invite peace to return once again. And it has different attributes. Quiet eyes, a mind at peace, the sights are gentle, nothing but rest. It's very calming. Kathy, a comment?
Yeah, so this is heaven on earth, right?
that it's heaven and earth is found in that same state of mind. Yes.
Okay.
There, it's all everything is found within that state of mind, but you may not find it all at once. For in other words, there's a deepening that we go through. The first stage is just to have the return of peace, to experience forgiveness and return to peace. One more thing is, and we've talked about this before, it's the role of forgiving yourself, where in this quiet place of rest, the sights are gentle, only thoughts and sounds can reach the mind that has forgiven itself. And the way I read this is, in order for me to experience this rest and peace, I cannot take my self-condemning self, which is the ego, into that place. I must be willing to forgive, and that includes the big forgiveness, is forgiveness of all the comments I have about myself. This can be extended to, if I see the world as an ugly, evil place, what does that say about the way I think about myself? And so it's there are two different zones of our mind, and healing is learning to let go of our grip on that first zone so that we can enter into a state of peace once again. Kathy?
What need has such a mind for thoughts of death, attack, and murder? What can it perceive surrounding it but safety, love, and joy? What is there it would choose to be condemned, and what is there that it would judge against? The world it sees arises from a mind at peace within itself. No danger lurks in anything it sees, for it is kind, and only kindness does it look upon.
So the previous statement was a mind that has forgiven itself. So in this paragraph, when we say that, what does a mind that has forgiven itself, what need has that for thoughts of death and attack and murder? This is the mind that has entered in and returned to love, returned to its place of peace and light. That in that domain, none of the darkness exists. It's all seen as an illusion, as having no meaning. Again, the first 30 lessons of the workbook are all about recognizing that the world of ego has no meaning and is only illusions. So therefore, make sure you're clear on this. In order to see the real world, the mind has to occupy the high ground. It has to take the high road, occupy the high ground, and from that vista can look out upon the world and see only what it has found within itself is truth and peace and quiet. This is the laws of perception. They always work. Perception always works this way. It's the same law that causes people who are in darkness to see themselves and the world as fearful and what we talk thoughts of death, attack, and murder. It's the same law applied to, but being used inappropriately So this program is learning to use the laws of perception appropriately, which can only be done when you've taken the high road, when you've elevated your mind to be united with the Holy Spirit and thus with the all of creation. Sandra?
So when you see the world as innocent, you see yourself as innocent.
Yes. I would actually, what you said is correct. I think the sequence goes the other way around, though. You see yourself as innocent, and then it's easy to see the world as innocent. Because if you see yourself as innocent, there's no participation in judgment or condemnation. It frees you to have no interest whatsoever in condemning or guilting at all. So and this is my prayer that all of us would be, Susie emphasized those workbook lessons. I'm determined to see, I'm committed. I will not allow myself to continue to live in chaos. I'm determined to find the light. My prayer is that each and every one of us would make that commitment to ourselves. And one way that shows up is by practicing your workbook lessons on a regular basis, so that you train your mind to be keen to taking the high road. And it doesn't mean that you never make a mistake, you never find yourself going down into the low road, but it does mean that you more quickly recognize this could not be peace and seek to pause, change direction, and return towards a path of peace. Susie?
You know, it's lesson 257. Let me remember what my purpose is. And it talks there that if I forget my goal, right, I will be confused, unsure of what I am, and then always be in conflict. And now I understand why I was in conflict. And it says, it's not without deep distress, because I'm serving two masters, right? And it became so apparent to me. It took years, but it became so apparent to me that I was in such conflict, and that's why. So I just wanted to throw out that lesson. Those let me remember what my purpose is really hit me. So if I can say before anything, what is this for? What is the purpose? Am I fulfilling God's will? It's really easy if I'm honest with myself.
Mm-hmm. It is. Susie mentioned the conflict. I just wanted to pause on that. Look at it through a psychological lens. The real conflict is inner conflict. It's a conflict between what you truly are, created as God created you, and this superficial imposter called the ego, this little self that has an entirely different agenda and would carry you in an entirely different direction. That's the conflict right there. And when the Course says very explicitly, when that inner conflict is resolved, then all conflicts are resolved. Then we no longer view ourselves as judges of others who are in situations of conflict themselves. We understand, oh yes, I know what it's like to be in an inner conflict and be confused. Maybe I can be helpful to this person in seeing through their illusions.
I just wanted to add one thing, that I had this, you know how the expression of being gaslit, and then that's a feeling of being crazy. Well, I know that's the ego. The ego is the ultimate gaslighter. I just thought about that last night, so just wanted to share that.
That's cute. That's cute. Will?
Yeah, I think there's a fine point that hasn't been brought up, and that is, and I'm going to use the word pragmatic. So my sense is that as an observer, I can look at the outside world and I can see this conflict, and I can see that that's a reality for those people out there. And but I can take care of myself in that I can, look at it from a place of acceptance, not trying to change what's out there, even though even on some level it needs changing, but being able to have the peace within myself to look out and see all of this conflict that's out there, and feeling sorry for it's not the right point, but it's almost like, I don't want to delude myself and say that that doesn't happen out there.
Mhm.
But I do want to say to myself that I don't have to become a part of it. And by judging it, I become a part of it. And by just being a neutral observer, I'm able to maintain that in myself and hopefully spread that feeling to somebody else.
Indeed. Thank you, Will. This brings up a point that is really not talked about in this section here, but so to use Will's example, you're in a situation and you see someone else who's very troubled. And you do, as Will suggested, not identify with the troubles, not lose yourself in that, but remember who you are. And then the Course says about our function here on this world to heal ourselves and to help others heal. And so there's a call from your soul to the other person's soul to heal. And the point that is subtle is that at that moment, we want to pause and wait for the Holy Spirit's guidance as to what part you might play or in that moment. For in some instances, it may just be that you bless the person silently and move on. And in other instances, the Holy Spirit will realize long before you do, that you are just the person to offer a kind word or a hand to to the individual who's suffering. And so it's described in the Course as the difference between an indiscriminate miracle where I feel compelled to help everybody that I see, whether they want it or not. It's indiscriminate and it's being initiated without guidance, versus a Christ-directed miracle that comes from deep within and says, you are the one to step forward into this person's situation and offer a hand. And this requires discrimination. It's one of the finer points in miracles, but it's one that we should all be aware of, is wait for inner guidance as to whether or not you are being asked to do anything. Thank you for bringing that up, Will. Heather?
Just to follow up on that, I used to be really indiscriminate with things like that. So now what I'll do is, if you have an impulse, what I'll stop and say is, Holy Spirit, is there anything you want me to do about this situation? Rather than just assuming there's something I'm supposed to do. So it's just that pause and asking and then waiting for a response has been really, really helpful for me.
And I think if we all practice just that, pause and ask, is there anything for me you would have me do? here, that would make a world of difference. We wouldn't then jump into indiscriminate miracles and by the way, there are some situations where you are not the person to be helpful. You just aren't prepared. And the Holy Spirit has all this evaluated completely and understands who can help who best. And so that's where we want to follow inner guidance. Thank you. All right, so we'll go on.
The real world is the symbol that the dream of sin and guilt is over, and God's Son no longer sleeps. His waking eyes perceive the sure reflection of his Father's love, the certain promise that he is redeemed. The real world signifies the end of time, for its perception makes time purposeless.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to the concept of a developmental model as we all begin with the concept of the world as a frightening, terrible place where I'm inadequate to the challenges that are there. That's the ego state. And then we begin to question that. I do not understand what anything is for, and let that go. This is practicing forgiveness and turning to the Holy Spirit for guidance. Now we begin the process of entering inward we take that pause and seek for inner peace. And as we enter into that inward journey, it too can be viewed as a developmental process where you learn to trust it more, where you learn more quickly to pause and turn within, where you learn to be committed to doing so daily, and where it becomes ultimately your new habit. It's the way you initially respond to a situation is out of pausing and seeking spiritual guidance. All of that takes some experience and some learning. We learn to develop it. So this paragraph here, where it points towards where we begin to wake up, and so that we're no longer walking around unconscious and in dark clouds, seeing the Father's love, and begin to recognize that this journey that we are on from darkness to light has a beginning and it has an ending. And at the end of it is the end of time, where time no longer has anything it can teach. And here's the principle: complete perception of the real world makes time purposeless. Now we're talking about the advanced stages of mastery, if you always look through the eyes of love and holiness and forgiveness and never get pulled into the low road of guilt and judgment, then at that point, there's no more for you to learn in time. Time has become purposeless. So that may seem like a long way off, but know that the Holy Spirit has this plan for your destiny right from the beginning. And the very methods that we're using now are the same methods that will carry us to that state of mastery, where time no longer has any purpose. Sandra?
Sorry about that. I couldn't see. Yeah, I have found that there's a direct correlation between meditation and my ability to be able to pause. I'm complete.
Yes. A direct correlation, because it becomes your go-to. It becomes a habit. The way I think of it, it's your security point is identified is that inner world contact. Your return to love is where you are secure. Whereas before, I thought I was secure by trying to figure it out myself, or trying to argue through in my own mind what's the right way forward here. And I can tell you through long hours of days and years of arguing in my own mind that is no secure point. That is just a mind in turmoil. Kathy?
Yeah, what I have found is as my inner world heals, and that is the journey, and then I'm turning outward more in love toward my brother. And I wouldn't say the word concern for the outer world, but I would say, where can I help? What can I do? Where can I go? Use me, dear Lord. And so, I don't know, that seems to be first the inner world, then the outer world.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Leave your mic open and we'll go on.
Okay. The Holy Spirit has no need of time when it has served his purpose. Now he waits but that one instant more for God to take his final step, and time has disappeared, taking perception with it as it goes, and leaving but the truth to be itself. That instant is our goal, for it contains the memory of God. And as we look upon a world forgiven, it is he who calls to us and comes to take us home, reminding us of our identity, which our forgiveness has restored to us.
Mm-hmm. So what is the purpose of time? Forgiveness is the purpose of time. When forgiveness is complete, time no longer has a purpose. And so it comes to an end. And interestingly enough, you could say the Holy Spirit will no longer have a job. Interesting enough, the Holy Spirit's goal is to work herself out of a job so that forgiveness will be complete. Time no longer has a purpose, and that phase is done. And so in the spiritual domain, the Holy Spirit stands at the end of time where the journey is already complete. She sees the beginning from the end, the Alpha to the Omega. She knows where all this ends up. It's like a script that is already written. So she stands at the end of time, and now he waits but that one instant more for God to take his final step, and time has disappeared, taking perception with it as it goes. So the Holy Spirit waits in the loftiest of conscious domains. It's deep within you already, this spiritual state. And our journey is more and more to be willing to enter into and trust and join with her in that state. And as we do, the path becomes clearer and more obvious. The truth is, you need do nothing. The script is already written. You need do nothing but trust the Holy Spirit's guidance. As Sandra said, I just need to meditate so that the pausing becomes second nature to me, and I do so regularly. That instant when the end of time and truth has replaced it is our goal. It contains the memory of God. This is that instant. The Course refers to this instant as the transition point from time to eternity. What happens when time comes to an end? We transition from time into eternity. That instant is our goal. And that the Holy Spirit never loses sight of that goal and would, like a kind mother, call you back home to join with her in that goal and to enter fully into your divine inheritance. Heather?
I just realized as you were talking, Jonathan, that, I'm thinking about the end of time, and all of a sudden I really realized that the holy instant is now. And if I'm in the now, that's the end of time right now, because I'm not focused on time. So it's the lofty end, but it's also, we can experience that right here, right now, when we stay in the now, because that's where the Holy Spirit can direct us. So I just realized it's a transcendent idea, but it can be applied right now in the holy instant of now, because that's where time drops away.
Yes, that's right. And Heather, it's right. I find it helpful is this is where we shift out of the horizontal domain of time and into the vertical domain of timelessness. It's an abstract concept, but it doesn't mean that you are forever gone from time. It means that while that experience is happening, time is not the gauge. The laws of time have been transcended and the laws of eternity are in effect. And so it's as if time does not exist during that holy encounter, that holy instant. So yes, only God could make such things possible. Kathy?
Yeah, I know that the Course says time is for healing. I think forgiveness is the method we use
Yeah.
to get there.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to say that Marianne Williamson talks about the Holy Spirit when his journey is done, or her journey is done, she remains with us as a friend. And I don't know if that's in the Course, but she said it was, so.
So it doesn't refer to as a friend, but it does say that the Holy Spirit remains in this domain. She does not return to the paradise. This is kind of a minor point within A Course in Miracles, but yes, it does make a singular statement that when this journey is over, the Holy Spirit will remain here.
I thought that we are in Holy Spirit school, and that we are, when time is no longer, that's because we are the Holy Spirit. There's no more separation between us and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, I think a way to really grasp this is, Sandra, that when we say we are the Holy Spirit, which means we will fully have adopted the mind of the Holy Spirit as our own.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of my having my separate ego mind that is always putting forth an opinion, I've completely let go of that and adopted the mind of the Holy Spirit. And then I go about my existence with the mind of the Holy Spirit. It's not about space or location or time even. It's about sharing the mind of the Holy Spirit, which, as we know, views everything through holy perception.
Well, we're spirit. I am a spiritual being having a body experience. But because I have let my mind split, I'm not whole and complete. So I think of holy as being whole and complete. Once my split mind is healed, I am holy. And so I'm the Holy Spirit.
Yes. Yes. Julie?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Jonica. So, again, I think I'm supposed to know this already, but this has nothing to do with being physically alive. That's one, right?
Julia, your audio cut out a little bit. Could you walk us through that again?
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I went by a bunch of data centers. So this concept has nothing to do with us being physically alive in this particular illusory domain, right?
I would say the physical part is one domain, but we're talking about the part of mind and your state of mind, which is a different domain than the physical part. They can be integrated, but until we see clearly, we view them as separate.
Okay.
So no, we are talking about like a holy encounter, a holy instant would be having that experience right here, right now, while we're in a body. But
Right.
it's an experience that stems from a conscious mind. It's not because the body's in a better position or is
Right.
it's not, it's independent of body conditions.
Got it.
It's very dependent on the state of consciousness.
Okay, but could I ask one more question, please?
Of course, yeah.
So, is there a point at which we no longer have the capacity to choose or rather to unchoose? So, for example, my path is I require a lot of choosing because I experience things that are outside of the holy instant. And so I choose, and that's just part of my journey. But at some point, excuse me, do we get to a place where we couldn't unchoose it even if we wanted to?
So let me rephrase your question in a way that I think will give you the answer. The Creator, having given everyone free will we reach a point where he takes it away from us, takes it back, and says you can no longer have free will? You're forced to follow that path. You see where I'm going with that?
Yep.
No, when the Creator gives us a gift, Julie, it's for eternity.
And so because I won't ever actually like take the place of the Holy Spirit, as long as I am whatever I think God created me to be, it's just that my choice points will become seamless.
Yes.
Or
yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. A trained mind that is centered in your holiness doesn't think about maybe I'll commit murder today. It just doesn't venture out into that territory. It's not saying that you would be barred from doing so, but it does say that it doesn't even occur to think like that. I think it's like we don't even think like that. Wow, that was an amazing discussion. Now, we're at the top of the hour, and I'm going to make an executive decision here about whether or not to pause or go on. I feel like that was complete. So I'm going to go with that, and we'll pick it up again next time. You know, it's not about how many pages we read. Or it's about the experience. And I'm feeling like we just had a complete experience. And what more do we need? That's what we're here for. So we'll go with that. And I just am so appreciative of each of you that we get together this way and we look at these ideas, and all of a sudden what might have been cloudy the clouds start to lift and clarity takes its place instead. That just means so much in our little world that is so troubled and confused, to have moments where we keep the real world in mind, and do so together as a group. There's a lot of power in that. So I thank you and honor the spirit within you that chooses to take the high road. Thank you, Kathy, for reading. Thank you all for your attendance. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks.
Yep.
Namaste. Thanks, Kathy. Thanks,
Thank-
everyone.
Have a good day.
Namaste. Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
Jonica.
everyone.
Peace and love all.
Thank you.